Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us for the Honda Classic edition of the Humpnostication Proclamation. I am your host, Hump Bumgardner, and I'm joined this week by a very special guest. He's a prolific picker of golf winners and a writer for the Sporting Life. You can find him and all his work on Twitter at Ben Coley Golf, all the way from across the pond, where he's hopefully enjoying a pint or two right now because it's much later there than it is here. It's Ben Coley. Thanks for joining me, Ben.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. You mentioned that the weather there is a little bit warmer than usual. Is that correct?
Yeah, we got a really nice day today. I mean, we're still talking pretty cold, I imagine. I don't know how to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, I'm afraid, but it's like usually about 6-7 degrees this time of year. We got 15 today. So yeah, I didn't even have to wear a coat. So yeah, happy days.
Yeah, that is good, man. I'm down in Florida and it's around 80, 85-ish right now. So it's probably a little warmer here. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I like the Florida swing, actually. It feels like we just, you sort of hostage to the weather in California a bit, but usually in Florida, although not necessarily this week, we're more likely to get the sun on our back.
Yeah, and speaking of the weather, I did want to touch on that with you. The weather forecast, specifically the wind forecast for the Honda this week, is a little out of the ordinary. Usually the wind is whipping over there really, really good. I looked before we came on. Thursday and Friday, there doesn't look like there's going to be any wind at all. It looks like it could kick up a bit on Sunday. But I'm interested to know, do you think that that's just going to make the course easier for all the golfers, or is there any particular golfer that you can think of that struggles in the wind that this might really, now with no wind, set up well for them this week?
Sure. I mean, the interesting thing, with PGA National, the record there for major champions in particular has been outstanding. It's either been like a prescient event in terms of unearthing future major champions like Y.E. Yang, for instance, or a course that rewards proven major champions. And I think part of the reason for that is the ability to cope with varying conditions, winds that come and go, day-to-day differences in conditions. I suppose it speaks to just a world-class player, but also one who is able to, adapt and cope and keep a level head, particularly through the bear trap. Now, this year, with it having rained as well and with there being no wind, I think it just really widens the net, if you like, in terms of who could potentially win it. When you combine that with the fact that the field is not strong, bar JT, Brooks Koepka and Ricky Fowler, it's fairly weak. I think it really is one of those events where kind of anything goes. I'm not sure we should expect another Adam Long, but maybe we'll get something a little surprising.
So I'm interested, you're talking about it being a weaker field, and there's a lot of European guys in the field this week that people who aren't degenerates may not recognize their names. And one of the guys that I'm really, really interested in is Matt Wallace. He's over there from your neck of the woods. He's actually has the 18th highest salary on DraftKings this week, which I found very, very interesting. He shot 67 on Sunday at the WGC Mexico. And before missing the cut at the Saudi International, the guy was on fire. He had ripped off 2 top 5s, and he didn't have a finish worse than 16th in 4 straight Euro Tour events. How does Matt Wallace's game set up for a place like PGA National?
Well, I'd be a little bit worried about him around the bear trap, actually. I think that's kind of the one issue I would have. Not only his lack of experience of playing golf in the States in general, let alone at PGA National. The weakness in his game when it does go is his approach play. So he can run up a big number on a par 3 like the 15th and the 17th. I'd be holding my breath there. But broadly speaking, he's a player on an upward trajectory. His rise, I'm sure people know, roughly where he's come from. But he won 5 times in a row on the Alps Tour, which is I don't know what it's equivalent to. Probably one of the minor tours you have in Florida, actually, in all fairness. But from there, he went onto the Challenge Tour. Took him 3 starts to win a co-sanctioned event, get onto the European Tour, and he's gone and won 5 times on the European Tour. This is all in the space of 3 years. So if nothing else, the man knows how to win a golf tournament. If he had a slight criticism, it would be the fact that he's never really rubbed shoulders with the very best, but he's starting to do that now. Obviously, he was second to Bryson in Dubai, and he was second the back end of last season to Danny Willett in Dubai as well. So he's just getting better all the time. I don't know where his limit lies. I think he's probably a bit too expensive this week on DraftKings, and maybe he's one to watch. but basically going forward, he drives it really well. He putts really well. And if you're looking for a player to maybe say who's he like, I guess it would be Ian Poulter. They're similarly tenacious, and they're the kind of player where you go, well, what are they brilliant at? And you can't really say, except that when there's a 20-foot putt to win a tournament, like with Poulter in Houston last year, it goes in, and that's what Matt Wallace has done for the last 2 years. So fascinating to see how he gets on.
Oh yeah, I'm really interested to see how he plays, and that was a great take on him. You got me a little bit excited about Mr. Wallace now. Now, a guy that I love every week, it doesn't matter where they're playing, is Kirinich Appy Barnrat. I mean, the guy drives around a purple Lamborghini or something. He's really out of his mind, ripping butts on the course. He personally helped Hump last week with that crazy 3-birdie streak at the end where he rocketed up to a T3 finish down there in Mexico. Guy didn't shoot a single round below or worse than 69 last week, so he was really locked in. But he's also prone to just missing cuts. So he's a scary, scary guy. What's your take on the Barnrat this week?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing in his favor, I guess, is the way he played in Mexico. He did it last year as well. He was top 5 there last year. And okay, it's a different level, but he went from Mexico last year, that top 5, to the Asian Development Tour and won. Obviously, he'd have been favorite for that tournament, whereas he isn't here. But he does ride the hot streak, if you like. He puts weeks together where he plays unstoppable golf, very much a confidence player. And I suppose that really relates to the way he swings the club. Like he's, over in the European Tour, we call him the Asian Tour's John Daly, if you like, because he has that massive overswing. And I feel like I'm not a golf tutor or anything close to it, but I feel like that's the sort of thing that it relies a lot on timing and his hands and all that sort of thing. So when he's confident, when he's hot, it goes well. When that falls off, then it goes badly. So I would be generally positive about him this week. I know he didn't play very well here last year, but he's got a couple of top 10s at the Arnold Palmer, which is loosely similar. But the key factor really is that when he's confident, he's just a world-class player. And as you said, he's a very, very popular one.
Well, there's another 3 guys I want to touch on with you here, and it's 3 of the 5 or 6 guys you wrote up in your piece this week were guys that I was kind of thinking about, so I was glad to see that you were also on a few of them. Emiliano Grillo, he's a guy that, as I'm building lineups this week, I just kind of keep seeing him going into each and every one of my lineups. I love him. I know you like him a little bit too. Tell us what it is that you like about Emiliano this week.
Well, first of all, just his general consistency and the fact that, if you were to say what's Emiliano Grillo good at, it's ball striking. He's just a world-class ball striker. I personally am of the belief that he can be a world-class player, a top 10 in the world player, if the putter ever gets fixed. There were signs last year that it was, but this year he's putted really poorly. So I guess you're pinning your hopes on a return to Bermuda. He does live in Florida now, so he plays a lot of golf under the sort of conditions we should expect this week. And also, if you go back to his amateur days, when they had a junior tournament here, the Polo Junior Golf event, he was a standing dish in that. Sorry, that might be a British term. He played there every year and always played well.
Wait, say it again. Say that thing again.
Standing dish. That's
standing dish. All right, man. Yeah. I like it.
There you go. You can add that to your vernacular. So he was brilliant around here. And I know some people would say, okay, well, that's 10 years ago. He was a junior golfer. What does it matter? But actually, if you look at one of the renewals of that event, Ricky Fowler finished second to Morgan Hoffman. Now, it's only 2 years in the Honda Classic since Ricky Fowler won it and Morgan Hoffman was second. So it's not always worthless. And I think the challenge for a handicapper or whatever is to try and acknowledge those things without going overboard, but definitely don't ignore them. And I think most people would be minded to ignore them. I'm not one of those. So I like Grillo, and obviously he was top 10 last year as well.
That is awesome. And I love getting the vernacular, the English vernacular in there. I like it.
People think I'm posh, right? I'm really not posh, but I think to certain people in America, I sound reasonably posh. I just like to make clear, if I showed you around the rest of this room, you would be aware that I am not posh at all.
But you are dropping junior golf dimes on the people, and this is the only place you're going to get it here on the Humpnostication Proclamation. I love it. Now, another guy that I like, he's an Irishman, Mr. Graham McDowell, GMAC. Now, I guess he had some kind of wrist injury, so he wasn't playing too much, wasn't playing great when he played, but he's rounded into form for sure. He has played well at this course a number of times. He's also had a few missed cuts here since 2015. So there's a lot of people talking about his great course history here. It's kind of a mixed bag, in my opinion, especially more recently. You like him a little bit. Tell us why.
Yeah, there are only 5 players in this field who've played the event 3 or more times and average under par, and he's one of them. I think he's second only to JT, but he's right up there with Fowler, Garcia, Luke List, I think is the other one. So for that reason, obviously he comes onto the radar, but I guess this is kind of, for me personally, an on-brand selection because I like the little hidden motivational factors in golf. And if you look at what Graham McDowell's got to play for this year, for starters, last year he was a Ryder Cup vice-captain. I think he got a taste for sort of captaincy in the future, but also maybe just a reminder that he's got a lot to give on the golf course. He will have missed being a competitor on that team. And one of his fellow vice captains, Lee Westwood, went out and won in South Africa at the end of the year. Coming into this year, GMAC, obviously, we've got the US Open at Pebble Beach, which is where he won it in 2010. We've also got the Open Championship at Royal Portrush. Portrush is where he was born and raised. That is his hometown. I can't emphasize enough how desperate he'll be to play in that. And if you look at what McDowell has done in his career, you kind of go, well, you know, he's not a modern golfer. He doesn't hit it very far. What does he do brilliantly? He's a fighter. He's a scrapper. And having that something to play with long term, you know, something to incentivize him, I think is the reason he started to play better. Then when you throw in the fact that all of his best golf in the US has been when the wind blows, I kind of wish we got some wind this week. But on a course where there's water and precision is kind of a bigger factor. Obviously lives out in Florida, played a lot of good golf in Florida. And 4 top 10s here. So I think there are loads of little things that point to Graham McDowell going really close to winning again over the next 6 months. And this seems like a good place to try him.
Well, I mean, I was excited about GMAC just kind of looking at his recent numbers, but talking about that hidden motivation stuff, now I'm all in on Mr. GMAC. I love that stuff. Now we're going to move on to the final guy from your piece that I was interested in. And this guy has been really, really bad to me this year, but I keep going back to him. I just feel like there's going to be one of these days where he gets his game turned around. He was a hot shot last year, hasn't shown that same kind of flash in this year. That's Joaquin Niemann. You mentioned him in your piece. What is it about Joaquin you like?
Yeah, well, I guess this is one where it's more of a bet than a DFS play. I don't know, you know, whether I'd be so keen on playing him in DFS. But the reason I was minded to bet him this week, for starters, he's 150 to 1 out here. I mean, that's a very big price when you consider his potential, the fact he spent so long as the best amateur in the world, and obviously came out on the tour and in 8 starts, 4 top 10 finishes, just turned professional to get his card. That's kind of the sort of thing Jordan Spieth did. Long term, I think we all probably agree that Joaquin Niemann's going to be a real superstar. In the short term, in terms of this week, the switch to Bermuda I thought was interesting. He has actually played a lot of golf in Florida, despite, of course, being from Chile. He finished 44th or 45th, somewhere like that in Riviera. He just putted really badly, and it was the first time his ball striking really seemed to click. And the 2 other things I like, one is that this event has been really good for international golfers, you know, Korea, South Africa, Colombia, Northern Ireland, Scotland, various nationalities have either won or gone close. And the other thing is that he was 6th at Muirfield Village last year, which is another Jack Nicklaus design course. There's some correlation. I know they're kind of different parts of America, different styles of course, but the Nicklaus stamp is on both of them. So all those things put together, I thought he was worth a small bet. He's very risky. There's no doubt about that.
So Niemann more of a deep bomb, long odds kind of play for you this week than moving into the kind of the DraftKings environment, which brings me to my next question. This is kind of wild here, but all of a sudden, Michael Thompson is like the talk of the DFS world this week. There's no doubt that he has been on fire. I mean, it's seemingly top 15s every week he's played. He won here in 2013. I think he was 23rd here last year, somewhere around that. So he's proven he can play this course. He is on fire. Is there any chance of Thompson just flaming out this week, or do we just have to ride the hot streak?
That's a good question. I mean, I'd be inclined to hope, and it would be hope, that he doesn't play well this week, because short-term trends are kind of less reliable than long-term ones. And, you know, long-term, he's not as good a golfer from everything we've seen, with due respect, as his price would say he is this week. Obviously, absolutely. This is the one PGA Tour event he's won. He's played a lot of golf on Bermuda. He's probably at his best on a short technical course like this one. But he also, when he won it, it was really windy. It was that week where it's really, really a grind. He was brilliant around the greens. You know, I could see the argument that with a bit of rain and the course playing a bit softer and calmer and lower scoring wouldn't suit him. And I think given that he's going to be so popular, he'd be the thing I'd hang my hat on. I'd just say, look, I'm going to take him on. If he plays well, then, you know, there's always next week.
All right, Ben, we're moving into the Humpnostication Proclamation portion of the show. I'm going to give you some names. What I do is I go out to the site Fan Share Sports. I look at the tags, see who the industry's talking about, who they're not talking about. I try to come up with some plays that look like they're not going to be owned very highly on DraftKings, but also have the potential to pop. So I'm going to run these guys by you. You tell me what you think. You ready to play the Humpnostication Proclamation?
I've never been readier.
All right, man, from $9,000 and up, the high price guys, we got JT and Sergio, both with 37 tags this week. They are looking like they're going to be the chalk of the week. A guy that I know you were on a week ago, Alex Noren. He's only got 7 tags, and he's got a really, really bad 40% sentiment rating on FanShare. So people are saying don't play him. He does not rate very highly in my model, that custom stat model over at Fantasy National, mainly because his ball striking numbers recently have just been hideous. I saw, like myself, that you were on Mickelson a week too early. You were on JB Holmes a week too early. So I got to know, were you on Noren a week too early?
Oh, probably. You can throw DJ in as well. I was on him at Riviera, but there we go. Look, Noren this week, I think you're pinning your hopes on the return to Florida and Bermuda. He plays out of the Bears Club. And when he finished in the top 5 here last year, he was talking about that comfort level that he'd had and saying that playoff defeat over at the Farmers was more of a bonus, and he actually expected to play better in Florida. So, you know, 1 week of bad golf isn't usually enough to put me off, but I was taking a chance last week because he actually hadn't been playing well before that. And he was really bad in almost all departments. So he wouldn't be for me. I think it's interesting that he won at Le Golf National last year, the Ryder Cup venue. He won there in the summer. And I think if you were to pick a European Tour venue that's most like this week's PGA Tour venue, it would be Le Golf National. But I think there again, he probably wants that wind to blow. And to make it really tough. He's one of the hardest working players in the world, and he just likes to grind a little bit. So I think under the conditions expected, his current flaws will be exposed, and I expect him to struggle again.
All right. Now, another guy up there that I'm interested in because he's going slightly ignored is Koepka, Brooks Koepka. He looks like he's going overlooked. I know he hasn't played a ton. There's kind of this narrative in the States, at least, that you can't play him on courses with water. He only, wants to win majors. Just ridiculous things, in my opinion. But last week, his ball striking numbers were crazy, crazy good. He just didn't putt for anything. What do you think about Koepka this week? There's a lot of water around this place. Hasn't played a ton. Do you like him at all?
I think if he's going to be low owned, if that's something, and this is something that your viewers will know much more about than me, but if he's going to be low owned, he should be a must play, to be honest with you, because he's either the best or the second best player in the field. He's from Florida. And if you look at his golf here, I suppose you've seen both sides of the coin. He shot 78 in the first round in 2015. And bettered it by 14 shots in the second round, shot 64. But the key thing is that the conditions that we touched upon at the start, again, if you were going to risk him and you saw wind in the forecast and you saw that it was going to be a real grind, you'd perhaps, despite his 3 majors, say, okay, maybe not. But what were the conditions like when he won at Bellerive? They were soft, and they're going to be soft again relative to what we would have expected. They were pretty soft at Shinnecock as well, despite the fact those greens got baked out by the weekend. So he's got conditions to suit. He's the second best player in the field for my money. And therefore, if you can get on him when everyone else is going for Sergio or Adam Scott, well, yeah, you should do that.
I love it. So far, I'm locking in Koepka and I'm locking in GMAC just based on what you have said, Ben. Moving on now, we're going down into the 8K range. Now, this is guy I'm interested in him because I'm kind of tracking him up towards the Masters because I want to play him at the Masters. he seems to maybe be putting it together lately. Russell Henley, like him at all this week?
He's an old favorite, yeah. Obviously he won this event kind of out of the blue back in 2014, was it? And the key thing he said in his interview the next year as defending champion, he said, "I'd just like to get the West Coast out of the way. I don't like the courses. I don't like the greens." And actually played okay out west this time. Obviously Phoenix is the exception. It's not like Torrey Pines or Riviera, but he played really well there, and he actually played quite well at the Riv for a couple of rounds. So yeah, he'd be interesting for me. The thing with Henley is when he came out and he was winning the Sony, and then obviously he won the Honda, and then later on the Houston Open. He's just a dynamite putter, and that's kind of gone a bit. But that for me is, if anything's going to go, and you worry less about it, for me it's the putter, because it can just come back. And if it were to come back, if he were to register, let's say, a top 15 strokes game putting performance around a course he's won at, and he's a real Jack Nicklaus specialist as well, I'd think he'd go really well. So yeah, he'd definitely be on the shortlist.
All right, take it from Ben Coley, man. Russell Henley's got 3 tags on Fanshare right now. The aforementioned Michael Thompson, 23 tags. Moving down into the 7K range now. He's my boy. Let's talk about the Gooch. He's only got 4 tags compared to CT Pound's 20. GMAC is actually also up in tags there in this range. Gooch started out 2019 on fire, man. He had back-to-back top 5s at the Desert Classic and the Farmers, where his tee to green and approach numbers were just off the charts good. Then he missed 2 cuts at the Waste Management and the AT&T, where his numbers were atrocious. So which is the real Gooch? Did he just get hot for a couple of weeks and he's not very good? Or can we maybe expect him to start going back towards that really solid approach game he showed earlier in the year?
Yeah, it's difficult to know, isn't it? But I think he's good. I don't think that was a complete fluke what happened in January. What I really liked was the tee shot he hit on the last hole of the Desert Classic when he still had a chance to win. He hit this low bullet with probably a 3-wood or something, but it's just a real ballsy tee shot at a key time, the biggest shot of his career, really, because he would have thought at the time that he had a chance to win that tournament. So I like that about him. I think that explains why he won on the Web.com tour. If you look at the Web.com tour, when he won, he finished second the week before. So clearly he's a player that when he gets hot, he can take it through to the next week. I guess that would be the worry for me. I think he went to college in Oklahoma. I don't know if he's from Oklahoma. One of those 2 things is correct. My sort of stick a pin in it analysis of that would be that maybe he wants a bit more wind. And the fact that he does like to fly him low as well. I guess had it been windy, I'd have maybe considered chancing him. But on balance, I'd watch him and leave him for another week.
Off the Gooch. Okay. Now, down in the 6K range, there's never really a whole bunch of guys highly owned down in this range. But a couple of guys that I want to talk about. The first would be Hank Lebioda. He's a Florida guy, Florida State alumni. He was the ACC Freshman of the Year, the ACC Player of the Year. Was playing pretty good on tour, missed the cut at the Puerto Rico field last week, but he's only 6,400. So if he makes the cut and I get 4 rounds out of him, I'm okay. Is Hank a guy who could make the cut here at the PGA National? Yeah,
definitely. I think, like you said, the way he was playing before Puerto Rico, if he hadn't played last week, I think a lot of people would be cottoning onto him as a potential angle, because he's got 28th and 33rd out in California, and here he is coming home. So I think if you just don't play last week, then it looks good. Now he plays in Puerto Rico. He got off to quite a good start, but then missed the cut. I can forgive any golfer one bad week, especially when they're a rookie, especially when they probably have that heightened level of expectation, because he knows that he's played well in better fields on courses that don't suit him. And now here he is in Puerto Rico with a real chance, and he suddenly makes a few birdies on the front 9. And all of a sudden, maybe things just get to him a little bit. So he'd definitely be one to be interested in. Like you said, he won a lot of tournaments as a junior golfer in Florida. This is a home game. And I think if you're looking right down at that bottom range, a really good place to start is not just Florida, but those guys from the Southeast, because they'll have been looking forward to this, particularly the rookies. It's like when you get your card, what am I looking forward to? The Honda, Bay Hill, if I can get into it, the Valspar, those events, they're my chance to really bag a big check.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. All right, we got one more guy down here, and it's a guy that you had mentioned in a tweet that you were possibly considering him for a top 20 bet. That's Mr. Joey Garber. You've had more time to consider. Where are you sitting on that?
Yeah, I like him. I do. He's kind of the opposite of Lebioda in one respect, in that he wasn't playing very well in California. Goes out to Puerto Rico, really good third round, and ends up finishing 10th, which is his best PGA Tour performance. Obviously not played in many PGA Tour events. But if you go back a couple of years, he Monday qualified for quite a few, which is always a good sign. I know it's easy to talk about what Patrick Reed did as a Monday qualifier, but there are other guys as well. Austin Cook, another, who qualified for a few events. And then when he comes onto the tour, he's more ready, I suppose, to compete. It's taken Garber a little while, but he was a really good college golfer in Georgia. He moved to Florida. What's 8th grade? How old are you in 8th grade? Can you answer that? Is that like 13 or something?
13, maybe?
Yeah, so he moved to Florida when he was about 13. So, you know, he's comfortable there. He's played well in the Southeast on a number of occasions. As I said, that top 10 was really good. And 2 years ago, this event, he shot 63 in pre-qualifying. He then shot 63 in Monday qualifying. And all of a sudden, he's in the tournament. And he started with a 67. Okay, Friday wasn't as good, and he missed the cut. But he's a better player now. So I think he's one you'd have to be interested in. And I'm just going to throw one more name in for you. Blaine Barber qualified for this on Monday. He nearly won it a couple of years ago. He's another guy from the Southeast, and he's another one to consider at that sort of price range. Do they add them in? If they don't add them in, that's completely irrelevant. But they should add in the Monday qualifiers if they don't.
Bonus bomb from Ben. I love it. All right. Hey, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I do this to all the guests. I want you to throw out odds to win, throw out whatever DFS salaries are. Who is the one guy that, you know, if you were looking to make a play this week, who's that one guy that you really, really want?
Webb Simpson. He was 5th here last year. He shot a couple of 66s, a couple of rounds which weren't so good. But obviously since then he's won the Players. And I think that's the key thing for me. Like when he came to this tournament last year, we were still not sure where has this putting improvement come from? Is it going to continue? Is he really going to become a world-class player again and get back on the Ryder Cup team? He's answered all that, and he plays well wherever he goes now. But if you look at where he started the season, the Tournament of Champions on a really big par 73, then he goes to Phoenix, which I know he lost a playoff there, but it's still not a golf course, which is brilliant for him. He just had a good week at the right time. And then last week in Mexico, he just does not like that course. I'm convinced of that. So here he comes for this is his best chance so far this year. He's a brilliantly consistent golfer. He loves Bermuda. I think Webb Simpson will play well.
Are you there, man?
I'm here. Sorry. We almost got there and it broke.
That's okay, man. I think I can edit it. Right. What was that term that you said? Standing dish?
Standing dish. That's it.
All right.
It means, for us, it means someone who comes along to the same thing every year and always does well. So there you go.
And so you also taught us standing dish. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Ben Coley from Sporting Life. We'll see you next time on the Humpnostication Proclamation, folks.